Hey guys, welcome back again to my channel. This is Storytime in Glam and today is True Crime Thursday. So on Thursday we share true crime stories, real life cases in a calm and captivating manner. So this is actually my first true crime story on this channel. So I decided to share something big, something that shocked the world at exactly 3 years ago today. So grab your snack and your popcorn, settle in, and let's dive into the Idaho College Murders. He wanted to understand how killers think, maybe practice all he had studied, or probably get away with murder. This is the story of Brian Kubega, a criminology student, a PhD criminology student, whose obsession and fascination for crime turned into something horrifyingly real. I'll give you a little backstory about Brian. Brian studied killers for years, how they plan, how they choose their victims, and how they execute it. He was obsessed with crime, and on the night of November 13th, 2022, his obsession for crime would turn into action and 4 innocent students would pay the price. Brian wasn't just another student, but an obsessed one at that, fascinated about the psychology behind crimes. He wanted to know how killers feel, how they think. He did the strangest things. During his undergrad study, he even carried out a survey to ex-criminals, asking them how it felt to commit a crime, the before, the after, their thoughts, how they chose their victims. He was a crazy individual. Brian had a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's in criminal justice, and in 2022, he moved to Washington, where he was getting his PhD in criminology. He stayed not far from the state lines of the University of Idaho. And just across this short distance in the small college town of Moscow, there was a 3-story off-campus residence where 5 young girls, who were students of the University of Idaho, lived. On the 3rd floor, the topmost floor of the apartment, was Kylie Congarvers and Madison Morgan, who were both 21 years old of age and were best friends since childhood. And on the 2nd floor was 20-year-old Zana and Dylan Montesin, who was just about the same age. And on the base floor was Bethany. This house was filled with laughter and nothing more but the sound of college students, nothing out of the ordinary. But little did they know that they were being watched. Brian had repeatedly visited the restaurant where 2 of the young girls had worked, Kylie and Madison, and this was allegedly where he saw them, gained interest in them, and made them victims. But this particular information is not official yet. On the night before the murder, the night of November 12th, 2022, these college students were just out having fun and partying. Kylie and her best friend Madison were downtown at a bar and later stopped by at a food truck where a live stream would unknowingly capture the last few moments of them alive. And at around 1:56 a.m., the girls had returned home, completely unaware that they were being watched and that their simple girls' night out would become something part of a horrifying history. While downstairs, Zana and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin had just come back from a house party, a little tired, a little tipsy, and just ready to wind down. And this was at about 1:45 a.m. when they got in. Hours had passed by, the house had grown quiet, everyone had gone to bed except Zana, who was still awake, scrolling through TikToks, her phone lights shining brightly at her face. She was a little bit hungry, so she decided to order food from DoorDash, which came in not long after. But not too far away, a white Hyundai Elantra was seen driving around the neighborhood multiple times. It circled round and round the block as if the driver was waiting for something, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Inside the house was quiet, but the man outside, the man behind the wheel circling around the block, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, later identified as the 28-year-old PhD criminology student Brian Kubega, was about to change everything. Brian dresses up in all black, black masks, black clothing, black gloves, and he carries a large fixed blade knife. Entering into their house through the sliding glass door, he goes all the way upstairs to where Kylie and Madison is. Apparently, he had known the entire complex of the house because the security footage showed that he had been spying on the house for a very long time. Imagine the thought of someone knowing your apartment complex even more or as much as you do. And when he enters into the room, he notices Madison and Kylie asleep, and he just brings out his large big knife and then bam bam at them multiple times, unaliving them, and then turning around to leave the room. And on his way down, he spotted Zana, who had apparently noticed something very much unusual. Just before she could react or hide, he unalives her too. Seeing her boyfriend, who stayed over the night, sleeping on the bed, he unalives him too, and he just walks away. The other roommates, luckily Dylan and Bethany, didn't come face to face with him, but Dylan later narrated to the police that she saw a man dressed in all black, face covered, walking out through their exit. And she said that they were too frozen in fear to even call 911, but luckily they were untouched. And within minutes, the whole house was silent again. Brian had walked out the door, entered into his car, and left the residence. And by morning, when the police had arrived, what they saw was horrifying. There were no signs of SA, no signs of forced entry, no metal weapons, but somehow 4 students had been unalived, and 2 luckily surviving. Immediately, detectives started piecing things together, talking to neighbors, reviewing camera footages, looking at the phone records, and not long after, they noticed something very strange. A white Hyundai Elantra passing by several times the victim's house on the night of the murder. The car didn't have a visible number plate, so narrowing this down was very difficult for the police since there were about a dozen of white Hyundai Elantras in the area. Brian was a really smart guy. I guess he was trying to play how to get away with murder because he made it very difficult for the police to trace him, but just then a crucial discovery was made which led the police to him. Investigators found a knife sheath left behind, and on it was a trace of DNA, and when they ran it through their national criminal database, there was no information found on it because Brian hadn't committed any crime prior to this. So police had nothing but a single piece of DNA that they couldn't match to anybody, so they turned to genetic genealogy. So genetic genealogy is more like DNA science, where they get your family history and try to discover where you're from who you're connected to. So by uploading the DNA to the ancestry database, investigators found a partial match to a family line, and by careful tracking, it led them to Brian's father, and it wasn't hard to connect Brian to the case since he was his father's only son. And with that clue, the authorities were on to something. They began to follow Brian, follow his car, monitored his phone records, monitored his apartment, and Brian, he seemed like a really smart guy. He knew how to cover up his tracks. He would clean off every surface he touched. He would wear a glove, even to grocery shopping. The FBI and the state police needed more proof before they could make a move on Brian. Since he seemed to be really careful, they had to monitor him to his house, go through his trash, and then take a piece of cotton swab and disposable gloves which he had used, and when they sent it in for testing, it was a perfect match. And in the early hours of December 30th, 2022, police and FBI went to Brian's parents' house in Pennsylvania and they took him into custody. And when the police searched the house, they found the murder weapon, the black marks, the black gloves, the knife, and even his white Hyundai Elantra, which was spotted at the victim's house on the night of the murder. For months, Brian was swearing up and down that he was innocent and he was being framed, but nobody was buying that joke because the truth was undeniable. Finally, to avoid the death penalty, Brian pleaded guilty and he was convicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. So he got 4 life sentences, that's life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, and extra 10 years for burglary. Now, the once busy off-campus house has now been demolished with nothing sitting there but flowers and a memory of the 4 students whose lives were cut short. And this is a reminder that sometimes those who study darkness can get consumed by it. So we must always remember their names and may their souls rest in peace. So if you watched this video to this point, please do also leave a like, subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time here on True Crime Thursday at Storytime in Glam. Bye!